Welcome to Lens of Leadership, our Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. Before we dive into this episode's leadership lessons, let's watch a quick recap.
Season 2, Episode 5. Rainbow starts out with Nate not getting the window table at A Taste of Athens. Roy calls it straight as a pundit. Ted believes in Rom-Communism. Dr. Sharon agrees Isaac is too tense. Nate learns he isn't a big dog. Rebecca says people who are good at their job don't say it. Keeley says that is not how branding works. Rebecca sees banter is all about branding. Danny was born caffeinated. Higgins tells Rebecca that his wife is his rainbow. Nate asks Keeley to make him famous. Rebecca and Keeley just aim to make him assertive. Rebecca shows him how to be big. Ted asks Roy for help with Isaac. Isaac learns to play again. Nate spits a bit and then gets the good table. Ted asks Roy to coach. Rebecca banters. Dr. Sharon asks Ted if he need help. Roy walks off the studio set. Ted had him at coach, and viewers leave the episode with a big Richmond cheer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Caniglio.
And I'm Marnie Stockman, and this is Lens of Leadership, a Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. We're the authors of Lead It Like Lasso, a leadership book for life, your life.
And this podcast is an extension of many of the elements outlined in our book. We invite you to join us as we take a deep dive into each episode and explore the leadership principles as they play out in the series. And for today's episode, we're diving into Season 2, Episode 5, Rainbow. We're excited to jump into another number of different topics with Erin King.
We are super excited. So welcome to the podcast, Erin King. We're so excited you're joining us. So Erin, accomplished educator, speaker, founder of Inspired Education, where she empowers students, parents, and teachers really to create meaningful and impactful learning experiences. Erin's based in Atlanta and has dedicated her career to fostering authentic connections and cultivating leadership both inside and outside the classroom. Her innovative approach to education combines her deep knowledge of pedagogy with a passion for helping others discover their unique potential. So very Ted Lasso-like, and a passion for Disney World. So I think everybody can see why she's the perfect guest for a Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. As a matter of fact, Erin also hosts the Teachers Pep Rally podcast, which is great, fun, and educational. So how do we do, Erin? What else can you tell us about you?
I would give you both A+.
Okay, excellent. I'm one of those like coin-operated salespeople that likes good grades. So we appreciate that.
And that might be the best grade I've ever gotten. So thank you, Erin. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So we're here to talk about episode 5 of season 2, which we were just talking back in the green room is a fantastic episode. So, but before we get into kind of the really juicy subjects, there's this whole notion of rom-coms and romantic comedies. That's one of the underlying themes of the show. Erin, I got to ask, is there a favorite? Do you have a favorite romantic comedy out there?
Oh, I was really hoping you'd ask me that. And it's kind of, there's a lot of them I like, because, when you're in education, you need something that's, at the end, everyth's going to be okay.
That's exactly. It's all going to work out in the end.
Rom-coms are wonderful. Hallmark is probably a big, has a big audience of educators. I'm going to say You've Got Mail, which is kind of an old classic, but I love that one. My favorite thing is that Tom Hanks' character said he wanted to get Meg Ryan's character a bouquet of sharpened pencils. And if I received those instead of flowers, it would be wonderful.
I do like a good sharpened pencil. Yes.
All right. Marnie, you have a favorite romantic
I don't know
comedy?
if this counts, but boy, do I like The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock. Yeah.
Totally.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Do you?
I don't.
Pass?
I don't. I probably do. If there's one, I don't know if there's one that's based on Ireland. It's called Leap Year. Have you guys ever heard of Leap Year?
I'm Irish, so yes, Nick. How dare you? I've seen it.
Okay, so as I walk down into my family room every once in a while, like once a month, my wife is watching Leap Year, and I was very reluctant to watch it, but as soon as I watched it like 3 or 4 times, I kind of liked it. So How about that? I'll throw that one out there.
Well done.
All right. So like we said earlier, there's a ton of things going on in this episode. And one of them, Nate's kind of he's on a journey of some sort. For those that have watched the entire arc of the series, they kind of know where it's going. But in this particular episode, Nate he's really on a journey to more assertiveness. And that plays out, with him trying and needing to get the window table in A Taste of Athens for his parents' anniversary. But just this whole notion of assertiveness, I'm not the educator here. You guys are both educators. I'm curious, in education, how important is it to be assertive, Erin? What is that a thing? Is that something that you coach students or teachers to be more assertive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I have to say, I did not like that Nate found spitting as a way to get into the zone of being assertive or feeling powerful. But that's a side point. When I think of, so English language arts, certified teacher. And so I always have to think of like the meaning of a word. And when you think of being assertive, it's really about having or showing confidence, which I love, but then it also has, or some kind of forceful personality. And to me, I think a lot of times coaching or supporting educators is about teaching confidence and maybe even how to be commanding more than being assertive. Especially if you're a classroom teacher, right? You've got to be able to command your classroom. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be forceful, right? But it does mean that you need to let everyone know that you're in charge, but hopefully that you are finding also ways to assert yourself into the situation to build relationships with your students. But yeah, I would be weary about being assertive, although I will say as educators, sometimes there's certain hills that we want to die on, and you have to pick what those are. Sometimes it's for advocating for a particular student, right? Sometimes it's advocating for some kind of pedagogy or some kind of curriculum that is needed or works. But I don't know. For me, I think you got to kind of be careful with that. I'd rather teach or see people be more confident or commanding.
Yeah, confident is the word that came to mind straight away. And by command, we don't mean the command and control like Rupert. It is just having the command of the room, the presence, right? Which Rebecca kind of talks about with her, element.
Which is much more appropriate than Nate's spitting.
Yeah.
I like that though. I like commanding. I like advocacy. Being an advocate, because I think one of the things that we talked about in prep for this show is the line sometimes gets really fuzzy between being assertive into arrogance and cockiness. And, in the business world where that's where my background is a lot. I think, there's maybe a myth that you really need to be assertive sometimes to get where you need to go, to get your team where you need to go. That's when I first started leadership. That was one of my biggest faults, right? That's what I thought leadership was. And I was so wrong. And I love the way you frame it into, maybe not assertive, but have command of something. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Especially you don't want to err on the other side when you're first starting teaching class, right? I was 21 when I started teaching high school. Oh, command and control. I mean, Rupert and I could have gone toe to toe that first day. I walked in, slammed the door and said, the bell rang. What are you doing talking? I made it sure they knew who was in charge there. But you really, that was a better start than had I just gone in without any sense of command and let them walk all over me. That would have been easier. That would have been harder to recover from, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in the world of jobs, Roy's got himself a new job. he's busy being a pundit, sort of. So he starts off that way from punditry and then back to AFC Richmond for coaching, finding a better fit for himself, really. And really, I think they had all of us at coach when that episode ended. So how do you navigate those times when you feel like a new role is going to be a better fit that aligns with your strengths and passions?
Yeah, I definitely think we have to admit it can be difficult to pivot or change. Doesn't matter who the person is, what the personality is, that it's just human nature for that to be difficult, right? So we understand why Roy is having a hard time with that. For me, I like to trust my gut. Usually my instincts are the best way for me to realize that it's time, or that something I'm trying to make work isn't really working. And then I think it's also important to rely on friends, to have a trusted tribe of colleagues, like the Diamond Dogs.
Diamond Dogs.
Right. And to have mentors. So what I really liked in this episode, just to kind of bring it back to Ted Lasso, was that Ted did this for Roy. I feel like, even though Roy didn't ask for it, he saw the potential in Roy and what he could do, and also probably saw that him being this sports commentator wasn't really, he was even more grumpier than usual.
If that's possible. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I would say Ted is a mentor for many, and I would say he was for Roy. My English language arts lens kind of gets nerdy when I think about, I love that he met him at the kebab place, which Roy was not happy about, because didn't he call that like his kind of spiritual place, right? So I thought, for me, if I did a critical analysis on that, I was like, that's really cool, because his mentor came to a place where Roy is probably self-reflective, right? And he helped him to at least plant that seed in him of like, I think I know what you're meant to be doing next. Yeah. How do you feel about this? It didn't go over well, but it planted the seed.
It certainly did. Yeah.
I don't know. I think for me, I am always open to change, because I've seen that a lot of times, even if you aren't as successful as you want it to be, you learn something from it. But isn't it great when someone like a Ted Lasso sees the potential in you and kind of plants that seed?
Yeah. So we've read a good bit around the difference between kind of mentorship and sponsorship, right? Where mentorship is supporting them and sponsoring them is actually helping them to get a new position or a new job. So Ted didn't just mentor him, but he kind of sponsored him in ushering him into this new position. And it's funny that you mentioned change. I had, when I first became the math supervisor, the assistant superintendent who had been my supervisor when I was teaching, she came up to me. She said, "I'll give you this warning, Marnie. You're like me. You like change more than the average bear, probably more than we should. So be careful. You are going to have to learn how to get others. You can't just say we want to do something different because you're ready. You have to find a way to get others on board with you." And I think Ted recognized that. And so the planting of the seeds is step one, if not everyone wants to join the change train with you straight away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that's a good point, Marty. And if you're on the mentor side, be okay with if that person doesn't at that moment take it and do something with it, right? Yeah. Or ever do anything with it. The cool thing was when Roy finally did realize on his own, and he steps on the pitch. So I rewatched it recently, and so I noticed some different things. When he steps on the pitch as the coach with that kind of confident stature, right? Kind of like if you think about Rebecca, kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but in soccer games, how they have the ads kind of scroll through there's all of a sudden ad behind him for heart care. And I thought, isn't that cool? Like, yeah. Because
they did that on purpose.
Yes.
They don't miss a thing.
Yeah. No. So in those moments, it's just a reminder of when you find that your passion, or that you are your authentic self, or you go for something that could be great for you, that's just so good for your heart. I just thought that was so cool.
I did not catch that.
That is an Easter egg that I have not seen yet, right? And we've seen lots of them. We've researched them. I think that's a great call out. That'll be all over Reddit tomorrow, Erin.
Cool.
You just made history.
Nice.
So switching gears a little bit. So there's another theme in this episode around, creating your brand. I think early on in the episode, Keely, I think, tells Rebecca it's all about creating your brand these days, right? And then there's one of our favorite scenes. And we did a newsletter on this, I think, where Rebecca is, having a conversation with Higgins, and Higgins is telling the story about the first time he met his wife, and that somebody poured a beer over his head, or maybe he did. I don't rightly recall. And everybody laughed except his wife, right? And he goes on to say, finish the story.
I suppose the best brand is just being yourself.
I think that is such a powerful message. And it's one that I wish that I lived early on in my career, in my life, because I think I spent a lot of time, trying to be, what other people thought I should be, as opposed to, who I actually was. But, do you see that? I know you have inspired education, right? You're in the teacher pep rally. How important is it to be promoting your brand authentically, as opposed to promoting, a brand that may not be exactly who you are? I mean, does that make sense as a question? Is that just too obvious?
No, I think it totally does. And in my work over the last couple of years, whether it's one-on-one or with groups of educators or conversations, like you all came on the Teachers Pep Rally, so you were people we brought on. It's the best people who have whatever kind of brand you want. And it could be a big brand. It could be just a little one of them representing themselves. When they are their true, authentic selves and they have found a space to promote or discuss things that they're passionate about, then it's a total win, right? Yeah. It's that, it's interesting, before we were talking about the cockiness, when people get cocky and they maybe are even talking about things that just kind of feels, you get a sense, right? It just feels a little icky. Even like Nate, we talked about him spinning and stuff. Even that I don't think is authentic. Like, I think he's trying to make himself assertive, but I think the pendulum is going more towards the cockiness and the not so authentic. So I think when educators have space to think about who they are, especially when it's in the classroom or when they're leading a school or leading a district, whatever your role is, I think when you realize that you're doing it just genuinely because you enjoy it and you're sharing a part of yourself, that's when the good stuff starts to happen, like the secret sauce. People will get on board with you. You'll build relationships. And I think sometimes educators lose self-confidence. And so that's where I think that gets a little to the wayside, because there's so many standards. There's so many rules that are changing. There are new legislative bills that seem scary. So it's easy to understand why educators sometimes lose their authentic self. But to be honest, at the end of the day, if you are just truly who you are, you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you share people, what your passions are, I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be all right. Right.
And I don't know this for a fact, and I've never been an educator, right? But I would imagine that, if you find yourself a little lost and you're not being true to your authentic self, I would imagine the students would recognize that almost immediately.
They will be all over you.
Oh, they smell it, don't they, Marnie? They know. Most of the observations I would do in a classroom, that was the first thing, Nick, that I would notice. I'm like,
100%.
They are seeing right through you, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a coping mechanism sometimes. I think that it might be a lack of self-confidence. I think it could be even that people are just scared for their students or their staff to see who they truly are. I kind of related this to, so at the same moment, Nick, you're talking about where Keely's talking about your brand and you've got to promote yourself now. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because Rebecca's on Banter texting her mystery man. And at the same time, she says, oh, she got excited because the mystery man, who we all know who it is, but no spoiler, sent her the text from Rilke that says, our deepest fears are like dragons guarding our deepest treasures. To me, I think that those treasures are those things that make you, that make you your authentic self. And so what I love to do in education, and I think we could do it in the business world or anywhere, is to remind people why they're doing something and who they are and nerd out by it. I've never seen anyone regret taking that little step and sharing who they are or what they're excited about. I've never seen them fail. If anything, I've seen them come back and like, oh my God, that went really well. And I feel so great. I'm going to do it again.
It's funny when Rebecca's texting about Banter, at the same time, she got a message on the other app, right? That was just a hookup app. And you could tell she wasn't excited about, like, that wasn't the real her. That wasn't what she was looking for. That was just this placeholder. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's interesting. My daughter's teaching fourth grade now, and they, each of the teachers get to do a passion project about whatever they want. And Josie was a marketer prior to going into teaching. And so she's actually teaching the teachers how to use Canva and ChatGPT, from the like how to make everything pretty and fun and fast, which I think like that's what she's passionate about, and they will all love that, and it'll go great because they're each getting to pick something in their lane that really also highlights something that, you know, makes them unique and is a strength, which I think there's a lot more to that passion project than just doing extra professional development, you know, for the staff.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, so cute. Yeah. All right. So this is potentially one of my favorite lines of all time in Ted Lasso. And that is when Ted says, "The dark forest never happens at the beginning or end of a fairy tale. That darn sucker lands right in the middle." Right.
Now, these next few months might be tricky, but that's just because we're going through our dark forest. Fairy tales do not start, nor do they end in the dark forest. That son of a gun always shows up smack dab in the middle of a story. But it will all work out.
And so that was his delight in the Rom-Communism. So is Ted's belief that everything is going to work out in the end a solid strategy?
You know, it's one of the reasons why I love Ted Lasso, because for the most part, he is that kind of positive beacon for us. You know, that reminder. We all need that person. I don't know if everything always works out in the end, but I do think the essence of it is it's always best to stay positive, and that we have to be prepared for a change or a different mindset. What we think should work out looks like may not actually be the way that it should work out in the long run.
Because I know that you are a Brene Brown fan as well. You know, Brene Brown talks about paint done, right? Like,
yes.
So you are more likely, I think, to get to the outcome you expect if you're really clear on what you want it to be, right? In the book, Nick and I talk about manifesting. And I think the only way you can manifest something is if you're really clear on what you want that to be and can communicate what that is.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, maybe even, Marnie, at times, though, giving yourself space to not know what it looks like and let you be in that uncomfortable zone, right? So that you can figure out what you want it to look like. Sometimes,
and even if it doesn't work out exactly how you want it to be, I think having that default, so, you know, we say, okay, if this doesn't exactly end up the way we want it to be, at least we're going to have a great story to tell, right? You know, look for the positive in everything. And I would say that, you know, Marty mentioned that, you know, we talk about the rules in our book, and that is our last rule, which is manifest it, which, you know, I'm not sure if I really grasped onto that before working with Marnie, but by golly, she says it's going to happen. It ends up happening. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I'm now a believer. I subscribe to that religion 100%.
That's
it also
awesome.
helps to have a Marnie working with you to make it happen. So, but yeah, positivity. I love it. So and we've kind of alluded to the storyline a little bit from the standpoint of Ted and Roy, but you know, really moving how Isaac, who was struggling at the very beginning of the episode, so much so that on Soccer Saturday they were blaming, you know, the lack of performance with AFC Richmond on the lack of leadership that Isaac was providing as the new captain. And obviously during the episode, you know, Ted enlists Roy's help to get Isaac back into his, you know, his zone, his happy place, his flow. And he does so by reminding Isaac of his love for soccer, which I think is pretty cool. You know, so, you know, the fact that Isaac relearned, you know, that his love of soccer was really important to become the best version of himself is a good lesson I think we should hold on to in almost everything that we do, whether it's personal life, you know, your professional life, what have you. And we know you do a lot of work around professional development. Is this something that you talk about? Is it important in what you talk about with professional development, how you work with people, embracing that, that core value, doing what you love, and how does that play out?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what the episode's about. So I feel like I'm kind of repeating, this motif or this theme, but it is about being authentically you, right?
Yep.
And if you don't know what that is, I think part of professional development is to take time to either find out what it is or remind yourself of what that means, right? What are you passionate about? What is your why? I always forget how to say his last name. Simon Sinek.
Sinek. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a great place to start for someone who just looks at you with deer in headlights. Like, I don't know how to figure that out, or I don't know how to define my why. Right? Go back to the what, the how, and the why. And then, for me, I always like to make that have a personalized component. And that's where you see that passion activated. There's so many different things that we can do with our students, with our staff, with our school districts, with our communities, where if we all have a passion for it, or if an individual does, let them lead it and let them be curious and play, because it's going to probably go above and beyond even what they were expecting. And the reason is because they're curious about it, right? They're passionate about it. So that's why I like, do you guys cuss on here?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Nick does, not Marnie, but yes, you're allowed to, Erin.
All right.
Absolutely.
So Nick, this one's for you. Remember, Roy tells the sports commentator when he stands up and is getting ready to leave, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And Roy basically says, "Football is a fucking game. Have some fucking fun."
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes forget to do that. Yeah. Just have fun, be curious, be explorers. Adam Grant, I think he says, be scientists, right? Yes. So I think in professional development, a lot of times when I hear someone go to one and I ask them how it went, if it's a negative feedback, it's usually because the person didn't seem authentic. It was very canned, right? Yeah. It wasn't relatable, or they didn't give the participants time to play with the idea.
So I was actually going to, go on.
Yeah. So that's where I think for me, that's the key. If I can tell they're not, and it doesn't have to be fun, but they're not curious, or they're not starting to ask questions or start to think of the possibilities, then something's not right. And I got to bring it back to them to tell me, okay, what are we missing? What do we need to be doing here?
So I recently was talking to a school system, and we were talking about core values and how they play out, et cetera. And the comment was, I don't think we've done the core value activity, right? But it was just like a handout, move on. They didn't have time to sit in it and play with it and understand how that plays out. So when you find your core value, they made little like believe signs, but they put their core value in it, but that was it. They didn't then take the time, and there was no follow-up. And you know how it is. As soon as you get in the classroom, you're like, it's a roller coaster. And you're just hanging on to till you get to a break. Yeah. And they didn't have the time to play with it so that they understood how to use it as a strength and how that plays out in what their classroom feels like. So I think that is really important.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, like you said, Marnie, you've got to use, just like we do with our students in the classroom, a lot of if you want them to do something, you've got to do it in the time you've got them in front of you. Yeah. Right. So the homework, or take this great idea and take it back with you to your classroom or your school, that's maybe going to work for maybe one person in the room. Yeah. You got to give them the time, because it's not that they don't get it or they don't want to do it. It's just they didn't get the time to fully play with it and make it their own before they left you.
Yes. I mean, that right there, like their entire diatribes on homework in general, based on what you just said.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think I could talk on this episode all day, but we promised to not for the listeners. So last question, if there was a life hack / trick play called the Erin King, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the life hack is to find a passion, and hopefully you find throughout life that you have more than one. But even if it's one, find it and go with it. Like, make sure you incorporate that in every aspect of your life, right? Like, you mentioned earlier when you just, I love Disney. There's a lot of reasons why I do. I also love education. I could talk to you all about this till I'm blue in the face. So I try to find ways to bring both of those things together because it makes me happy. And then I find when I'm with other people and I'm incorporating kind of some of those components, whether they're Disney fans or education fans or not, they're smiling and going along with it. And they're into the conversation of whatever we're doing because of my passion. Same thing for other people, right? They tell me about something they're passionate about, may not be my jam, but I'm going to be all in on it because you're enthused. And then I think the other thing would be to make sure you identify your strengths with that. I know like Clifton's Strength Finder has always been a great one to use, because once you have your passion, then kind of make sure you're understanding what your strengths are so that you can lift up your passion using your strengths. You're not like Nate trying to be like Rebecca or Keely.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You're actually being your authentic self in the way you're doing it because you know how you can do it best.
Really well said.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us what else about Erin King. I mean, what's going on? You have the teacher pep rally. You know, we know you have inspired education. What should everybody know about Erin King? What would you like to share?
Oh my gosh. So like I said, I do kind of try to incorporate a little bit of everything. And a lot of this conversation is like true to my heart because several years ago, I created a conference for educators. It's just a small one because I think that allows that personalized component. We've had people from every different role in education that you imagine. In fact, I was excited. I got an email today from a group that was it's a private academy, and they work with adults and children who have some cognitive challenges. And so they were like, is this something for us? And I was like, heck yes, come. Because it's made so that we're all in it together. And no matter what your role is, we're going to make sure we're identifying your passion or reminding you what it was. And then we're walking you through some things so that when you go back, you've created what you want to do with it. I'm not telling you take this action and do it. I'm actually helping remind you what it is so that when you go back, you'll actually do it. And guess what? People are going to get on board with you because they're going to see how excited you are about it.
So how do we find out more about this for those in the audience that are interested?
So not surprisingly, it's going to be in Orlando, Florida this June. So near Disney. We do incorporate some of their blue sky thinking, mind mapping type things. You can go, I tell you what, there is an Eventbrite page, but the easiest thing is probably to go to my website, inspirededucation.info. And you'll see right on the homepage at the top, it says Main Street PD. There's a little Main Street light bulb on there because we're trying to cultivate curiosity and illuminate potential. So if you click on that, you'll get all the details and it'll send you where you can reserve a ticket. Like I said, it's a small event, so try to reserve
Grab your
seat
seat fast is what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll put that URL in the show notes for sure.
Oh, thanks, Nick and Marnie. Appreciate it.
What about the teachers pep rally?
So we have my buddies, Fred Abley and Pete Bush, our fellow educators. In 2020, we found ourselves calling each other a lot, just kind of saying because day to day things were changing as schools were kind of closing the doors and going more remote at the time. And I happened to say to my friend Fred, who's up in Pennsylvania, he's a professor. I said, it's funny. I wonder if anyone would also like to hear what we're talking about. I feel like we're talking about things that probably every educator right now is talking about. And he called me back the next day and he said, remember when you said, and I was like, I said that? And he goes, yeah. And so we started this podcast just to kind of lift the curtain up and talk about life and learning. Pete Bush is an amazing elementary school music teacher, and he does stuff on the side for performing arts students. And so it was just, I'm more of the secondary, middle school, high school brain. And then I'm right now doing work for an office of the superintendent. So we have all these kinds of guests, including you all, to come on and just sometimes we get really deep and real about things, but at the end of it, it's a pep rally. It's about lifting up education and educators and celebrating what we do. And it's just a whole collaborative thing.
So awesome. And we'll include the links to that as well in our show notes.
Thanks, Nick.
Erin, thank you so much.
Yeah.
An inspiration. I mean, if anybody wondered why maybe Erin King came on the show, I think we heard exactly why, because I think you absolutely live and speak the Ted Lasso way, and we loved having you on the show.
Thanks. That means a lot. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay.